The question is, how much uptake is there of Ergo Foundation grants being requested? Do you get many applications? Yeah, we do. We do. Now, the core thing that I want to stress to everybody is the Ergo Foundation has community money, right? It was distributed to the Ergo Foundation via mining. And so we do have a core principle involved that if you're going to apply from a grant from like a public resource, what you build needs to be a public good. And what that means is we want to see open source development. We want to see a path to open source code. That's important because not only does it help a project potentially bootstrap development, but it also gives to the entire development community, because then you get examples. And, the reality is there's a ton of money in the crypto space that usually you can go to as an alternative if you don't want to take that development route, right? Now, the Ergo community itself does a pretty good job of, open auditing and reviewing people's work when it's requested. So that community mindshare really is important. I think having open source development at this point, especially being that Ergo script is relatively new and our ecosystem is relatively young, we really need to focus on open source mindshare, lowering the barrier of entry to developers, having good documentation, getting tutorials out there, and learning from each other, because ultimately that will create a more open and resilient developer community. It's easy to kind of look at the, let's say, assumptions we can make around like mining and, distribution of hash rate. I think distribution of knowledge in the developer community is probably equally as important. Otherwise, we're just going to centralize around a few projects that potentially are closed. And then you kind of have a, walled garden that can exist in blockchains on the development side. It's good to have that open, in my opinion. What's your take, Ilya?
On Ergo Foundation grants?
No, just on open source development.
So I guess we can see the importance of open source development by the recent events by the recent situation, present situation with decentralized exchanges. For example, on Cardano, none of those exchanges open sourced their smart contracts, and basically we can't see how protocols look under the hood, which are used in the network. So I think it's extremely important to have at least smart contracts and ideally the whole protocols published and described in public, so community can review the solutions what are used under the hood in those protocols.
What's your take, Dan?
Okay, before I give you my take, I probably should unmute myself. There we go. Well, let me tell you about open source. So 2015 me would be like, open source, are you crazy? Really? I mean, open source is for like colleges and hippies and all that. Like, what are you gonna do with open source? Like, come on. It's you pay all this money to get the software done, and you're gonna open source it, and what, you're gonna like expose all the stuff that you wrote so somebody can steal it, right? Not now. This is me in 2015, right? Now, 2015 is actually around when I started to really kind of get into the blockchain sphere, right? So kind of exploring more and more and into Bitcoin, and this is like my pre-Cardano days, of course. And so more and more I started kind of getting into it. And the first project that really kind of made me really examine, like, what the hell is the deal with open source was Cardano. Because one of the things that, this is like really early, this is before Cardano launched, like about a year and a half before Cardano launched in early 2016, I was looking at the input output at that point, or, you know, what was going to be input output, which was like 6 people at that point. And one of the things that were on the website, and in fact, the website was in English, what was it, in English, Japanese, and Russian. Because we had English speaking and then a lot of Russian speaking developers. And then of course we did the pre-sale in Japan. And so I had a conversation with Charles about this a while back. Actually, I think it was the first conversation I was having with him. And I just and he feels really strongly about open source. He feels that open source is the way, And so I started that conversation. He kind of gave me his take on it. And really, that started to change my mind. And of course, all these things that you guys now know, that's when these epiphanies started to hit me. Like, okay, so open source, especially in the in today's development, I guess, universe, right? So what does that do? Well, first of all, that as a company, if you think about it as a business, and I start to think about this as a business first, I didn't start to think about it as just kind of like the greater good side, but as a business first, it removes some liability from you because your code becomes audible, right? Or auditable. So basically, some others, third parties, can audit your code and explore, which add to transparency, right? So transparency is good. Transparency means that your business ethics are good, right? You're being transparent. You're showing what's under the hood. You're showing how these things work. You're letting other third parties scrutinize you, okay? And then that, if you can answer these questions, if you can actually cover these bases that they scrutinize, it will show you as a stronger business, a stronger project, okay? Aside from that, of course, you're potentially exposing things that you've built and you spend possibly millions of dollars on to build to the public, and like anybody can just take that code, right? But the other aspect that a lot of development relies on today is community, okay? And that's also something that people should really remember, is it's not just about the code. It's about the ecosystem around what you build. And you can fork code, but you can't fork communities. And so essentially, I mean, that's really what's going to help your project evolve, is the community. You putting your code out there, and yeah, maybe some people in the community will do something with it. They'll do something new with it, okay? But with that, you will, like, for example, I think what the Nautilus wallet is being forked by Comet, right? Yeah, Comet is going to be doing something with them. Yeah. So I mean, I'm personally, I mean, I don't doubt that Comet, they're good developers, but I just haven't had a chance to interact with them on a developer level, so I don't know. They could screw it up. They could make it great. Who knows? The bottom line is it's out there, and somebody else is creating something with it, and that creates organic growth for what you have created, which in turn adds back into your ecosystem. And bottom line here is growth. You are encouraging organic growth, which is always better than artificial paid shield growth. Bottom line. This is why I am a big proponent of open source right now. As as a developer myself, and as a business person, because I believe that this is actually good business. To do open source is good business.
No, we went all crazy.
Yeah, we went a little haywire.
Oh, okay.
Wait 1 second. It kind of looks like me and Joe got a one giant head. There we go.
Let's go back to the questions.